WSOU 89.5 FM. I'm Valentino, and I'm joined today with Aaron from Red Fang. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Can't complain. Feeling good. So, diving right in here. Arrows out June 4th, 2021. Super exciting. How you feeling?
Also super excited. We've been doing a lot of press stuff for it. And uh, it's firing up my excitement again. And we've been practicing the songs as well, because we actually finished this record in December of 2019. So it's just been kind of sitting around gathering dust on a shelf, but it's nice to dust it off and um, get back into that mode again.
Hmm. Was it almost weird, like when you played it for the first time? Because again, you haven't played these songs in over a year. I'm sure there's got to be a little bit of nostalgia when you touch those again.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because we basically finished the recording and then did nothing. So we didn't play any shows after we were done with it. So a bunch of the not a bunch, there's a couple songs that we've actually never played before because they get adjusted once they're in once they're in the computer. Uh so it's been not even nostalgia, but it's been more like finding out that our songs are actually kind of cool.
Yeah. That's so awesome, and I'm sure that's gotta be a weird feeling too, because like, I've talked to bands that have, like, written and produced records in the pandemic, and it's just a whole bunch of, like, emailing back and forth, like, a lot of steps that would just be so quick if you were in person, so it's gotta be a little sense of grateful to be like, "Oh, well, at least we did record this before everything went away."
Absolutely. And we actually tried to do some of that email writing over the break. And, mostly it would result in like one of us sending an email and the other people saying, yeah, yeah, this is cool. I'm going to add something to it. And then 3 months later, nothing. So we just can't, you might be able to see the gray in my beard. We're not like the springiest of chickens. So, sometimes doing that kind of stuff is a little bit more of a challenge for us. So yes, very glad that we were already done with it before the pandemic started.
Now I know that Red Fang is again one of those bands where you guys are on the tour, yeah, on the road constantly. You're touring every day of the year, all the time. So I'm sure that in a weird way, this pandemic must have been a little helpful for obviously just your mental state. You get to relax for a bit. You get to not be constantly on the go.
There was a little bit of both. So right at the very start, uh, I made the easy decision to move up to my wife's house up in Tacoma because I live in a 1 bedroom apartment and she has this like 4 bedroom house. So it was the first time since we started dating that we actually lived together and spent actually, I think, more than like a month. I think actually, come to think of it, we probably had never spent more than about 2 weeks together, 2 weeks straight. So uh, being able to just kind of like get a little domestic and spend a lot more time with my kid, that was definitely really, really nice. Being able to actually make a garden for the first time in 10 years. But around the fall, I realized that it had been probably about 40 years since I had taken a break that long from playing music in front of people. So I started to feel, kind of depressed and like pretty antsy at the same time to get back into it. So it started out being really nice, but then it got to the point where it's like, no, 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 I'm ready for this to be over. This sucks.
No, exactly. And I know that a lot of artists are just like fans are itching for concerts and artists too. It's just we miss that like community experience because you can do a live stream and live streams are fun, but you're not like in the crowd. You're not feeling the energy in person.
Exactly. Yeah. I can't remember who I was talking to about that just the other day. Oh, it was my old friend of mine from college that I already had a fantasy about doing something akin to a live stream probably about 7 years ago as we started touring a bunch more. And it was just like, this is kind of hard and it's expensive to haul your gear all the way around the country all the time. So what if we just could, we just play in the practice space every night and just send a like closed circuit TV signal to a different venue each night of the week.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, taking away that, the audience element is like, well, the all the people being next to each other and kind of feeling the energy flow between everybody is pretty important, at least to our kind of music.
I almost think though, again, with the way that you put it, is having the audience in the venue, but having a live stream there, that would be it'd be different, but it's you would still kind of be able to mosh around, crowd surf, kind of feel it a bit. Whereas just like obviously in the pandemic, we're just at home with my mom and grandma watching. It's just kind of
Right, right, right.
yeah, you don't
Yeah.
get it as
So
much.
yeah, maybe it would work. I mean, that was like I said, that was an idea that was like way pre-pandemic. It was just basically out of laziness, you know. That's where that came from.
Oh, I love it. Well, again, focusing on the new record here, you've got 13 tracks. How do you feel? Like, obviously, you were writing these songs for a long time. Give me a little insight into the songwriting process. Does that differ from album to album?
No, it's I would say it's maybe the very first record was a little bit different, but only because uh Brian essentially moved up from California already with a whole bunch of songs kind of written ahead of time. But every record since then has been essentially the same process, which is it's a combination of working out songs all together in the practice space. And then there will be a couple things where I have a pretty distinct idea of what how I want a particular song to go, and so I just kind of compose it at home in the computer and then bring it into practice, and then we go from there. But that's been sort of the model since the second record.
Yeah. And I think again that like having all those like because I know some bands where it's like, okay, he's the lyricist, he's the musician, that's what they do. It's nice to have that like community element of, hey, all right, we're all getting together, we're gonna all write this, we're gonna chip in so that like every single you got a lot of different creative minds all at once.
Yeah, and it if there's a song that maybe Brian has kind of already written, sort of verse, chorus, and bridge, uh, and then he teaches it to us, and we start playing it in practice. Oftentimes, even if it already kind of worked as an arrangement, that when I start hearing, what David's doing, it affects what I do on the like. We all hear the songs differently, and so when I hear what somebody else's interpretation is, it makes me rethink what I was doing. And so we kind of come to a place that combines our four different ideas and tastes and approaches to music in a way that I feel like is better than it would be if just one of us was the boss.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And again, like you get all these different flares of personality and you hear it differently than, the other musicians would hear it. Um, a question I have for you specifically, and this is just more of a general songwriting question, but I know that like it's easy to kind of like sing and play the piano, sing and play guitar, but a lot of times the bass rhythms don't line up with like the vocal rhythms. That that sounds like such a challenge. What kind of goes into that aspect of it?
Well, sometimes I have to get real nerdy is the actual. I mean, I wish I had the piece of paper here, but I have written a couple songs with my wife during lockdown because we have a little like setup over here with her drums and one of my amps. And I actually have to like write out where every single articulation is on the bass, and then where the syllables land, so that I can just figure out like, okay, I hit a note here and then I sing on the upbeat, and then I just have to do it like that. Like I can't it doesn't flow naturally for me to just kind of like I can't barrel my way through it. I have to plot it all out with a spreadsheet.
And I definitely think that like that's probably the only way to go. Like I don't think I know any bass players that can just play the bass rhythms and sing over it without a lot of scrutiny because most of the time, as I said, they're two totally different rhythms.
Yeah, no, it definitely has been a challenge at times. Throw Up was the number one hardest one for in Red Fang, but it's funny that once you get to the point where you've practiced it enough times, it gets so locked, then you can start to like make them independent of each other. But it's you have to, at least for me, I have to do the hard work first of doing it just like super nerd style, and then it gets to the point where I can actually like shift either one of them independently of each other.
Because once it like becomes muscle memory, then you can start to add like all the other weird flavors that you feel in the moment.
Exactly. Yep.
Definitely. Now, again, in terms of like songwriting process with this new record, super cool. You have like an interlude kind of when you're writing a record, what makes you think, oh, I want to kind of put an interlude here? I think that this will be a good break between the first half of the record and the second half of the record.
I mean, a lot of it is so. I mean, that's getting into like a sequencing question,
Yeah.
right? And so that's not something that we think about ahead of time. It's sort of more like as you start laying out the sequence, you realize that that doesn't really feel right to just like kick straight in with this. Like maybe none of the songs feel like the right song to start with. And so, is there anything that we did while we were in the studio that we could use to kind of make that transition work better? And so, this particular record, we just happened to have recorded like 5 or 6 different things where we were just like, let's just mess around on the keyboard for a while, or let's just like jam on this one weird riff or whatever. So we had a lot of pieces like that. And so it was easier to pick and choose and try to find things that would work in those little spots where it just felt kind of like where the transitions felt awkward. So it's really similar to like songwriting process where you're making an arrangement and you realize that like trying to get you can't really necessarily mash parts A and B together. You need something in between them. Um, yeah, and we've done it before. Like on Whales and Leeches, there was this little thing that David had recorded uh, that Chris Funk latched onto, and then he had, like kind of fancified it and then threw it in there in between a couple songs. And we did it in Only Ghosts also. There was that song In Flames that was just kind of some like weird noises that helped ease you out of this one kind of intense song and into another one. So, yeah, I don't know if that helps or hurts.
No, definitely. I think, like, that's the thing is when I listened to this record for the first time, I noticed that the pacing was really, really cool. Like, whenever there's, like, a really, really energetic moment, you can follow it with the stuff that can either, like, lean you back into the energetic moment, so it's not just all at once.
Yeah, yeah, we kind of like. I think that's one of the things that uh, watching bands that have just like it's constantly intense or all every song is fast and gnarly. Uh, it starts to get exhausting. And similarly,
Mhm.
like if you're watching a band that every song is slow and mellow, you start falling asleep. And so that's part of the whole thing about music is that push and pull and, setting up expectations and then breaking them. That's what keeps you have to keep the ball moving that way.
Mm. And again, like, especially on this latter half of the record, we have Days Collide, into Rabbits and Hives, and then into Why. I think that for me was the moment where it was just like smooth transition. It felt so cool. Um, yeah, absolutely stellar.
Cool. Well, I appreciate that. That's funny because that's one of the moments that I was just actually walking around listening to the record like 3 weeks ago or so, kind of right as all of these interviews kind of started picking up steam. I thought to myself, "Oh shucks, I should probably get familiar with this record again since I'm going to be talking about it." And it's been a year and a half or whatever since we finished it. Uh, and that's the section that I was like, does this work? I hope so, because we thought about it a lot, and I remember at the time thinking, yes, we figured it out. And then listening to it on my walk, I was like, I don't know, I'm not sure if it does, but that's good to hear that it does.
Oh, absolutely. And again, I just think like the way it works is the second I'm like, okay, I kind of want a little bit more energetic. Instantly, it's like it's energetic. I was like, oh, perfect, like,
Yeah,
just what I wanted.
yeah, yeah.
So now another thing about this record cycle that I do want to get your opinion on is this has the most unique color scheme over all your records, where it's just neon green and like orange and like pink. And I think that that is so cool. For all of our WSU listeners that are listening to this on the air, check out the interview on our YouTube. And for all the people on our YouTube, just look around the corner over here and you'll see the album cover. Absolutely phenomenal. What went into that choice of making this album color like pop?
uh, I mean, for every record that we've done with Relapse, Orion Landau has made the cover artwork, and from Whales and Leeches through this one, we usually have a sit down with him. We have a little meeting about kind of his ideas and then the ideas that we're having at the time. Uh, Plus, we also send him a copy of it, an early mix of it, so he can listen to it and kind of get ideas just based on the sonic qualities. Um, so there's a lot of collaboration that goes into it. I'm not sure, like, I can't even remember actually how we ended up with this particular thing for this record. It was probably just he probably just had an inspiration and put it together and sent it to us, and we just immediately all knew that it was perfect.
Do you remember the first time you saw the record cover for the first time and you, like, looked at it and you're like, this is cool"?
I mean, I do remember that as soon as I saw it, it was like, yes, that's exactly what I want this album to look like. So well
Yeah.
done. He's a mind reader.
He's a mind reader. And I
Yeah.
think again, when I heard that first the title track Arrows, like when I heard that, I was like, oh yes, this like it makes sense with the album cover. It fits.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
what we're going for.
So now, again, you mentioned earlier, Rise Records, Relapse Records. My apologies. You mentioned Relapse Records. This is your fourth record with Relapse. Obviously, to stick around with them for so long, something's working. Tell me a little bit about working with Relapse Records for four album cycles.
Yeah. Uh, well, it's like kind of has a family environment for us because we live in the same town as Matt Jacobson and Orion, the art director of the label. They have like an office in Portland and they have one in Philly. And Matt and I grew up like not too far from each other in Colorado, kind of at the same time. So we have we've been camping with Orion. It's just like it feels real natural to uh, hang out with those guys, just like they're our friends, basically. And they are very well established in the business, so they know what they're doing, and they are very well. They're very organized and very well run. So we have really nothing to complain about from a business side, and they're also just super rad, fun guys to hang out with. So, like, why would we leave? I don't know. I guess maybe if somebody offers us a couple $1 million, then we would probably leave. Sorry, relapse. Then they would understand too. They would actually be stoked and they would understand because that's part of the whole thing.
Yeah. And again, it's so important to have such an incredible like record label behind you that feels like a family rather than just like a business. Cause like not to name any record label names, but you hear some real horror stories out there and it's just it's disheartening to watch sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, we've been lucky with all three of the labels that we've worked with. Well, we've actually worked with more because we did our first record originally on Wantage out of Missoula, and that's totally just like it's one guy. And then we did the second one with Sargent House, it's also, I mean, for a long time it was run out of Kathy Pello's house, and all her offices were in the house. It was, like people lived there, so that was super family feeling, and then um, uh, we had a couple singles come out with Volcom, and we're old friends with the guy who kind of is one of the our main contact at the music side of Volcom. So it's all of it. We've been lucky from the beginning. It's always been very much just like friends and bros kind of situation.
Yeah, and even like from a radio standpoint, working with Relapse has just been so easy and great. I know that they're a wonderful label. I can't praise them enough.
Yeah, because
Um,
they're in it for the right reasons because they
yeah,
totally love music, and they're not just like, hey, let's make money. When
yeah,
Matt started that label, it was not about I want to start a business. It was more like I loved music and I want to help. You know, I can't necessarily play in a band, so what can I do to be part of this world and support it? And that was what he did, and that sort of like philosophy has carried through to all the people who continue to work there like 25 years later. So
yeah. And that's the thing
kudos to
is
them.
exactly. And that's the thing is like I've said this so many times before, but when the music community is strong, like everyone benefits. And so, being a record label and finding either like local underground artists or even just up and coming artists, like it strengthening the scene can literally only help us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's silly to do anything that divides it or to like put yourself and your own profit above anything. It's always about collaboration and cooperation.
Yeah. Speaking of like the local scene, do you guys obviously, very removed from it, you guys have been a big band for a while, but do you remember a moment in Red Fang's career where you like were on the cusp, you were okay, we're just out of the local scene tier now?
I mean, I don't really, I never really thought of it that way. I think the thing that struck me as okay, well, that's something has shifted was playing a show at one of the local clubs, Dante's, which we'd done a couple times before, and having like I guess two things happened. One was getting to the point where I didn't recognize most of the people in the crowd because I moved to Portland in 1991 and have been playing shows since like 1994, 95, uh, and all of the shows until basically like whatever, like 2011 or 2012 were mostly my friends that were coming to those shows. And so like suddenly having a crowd of like, God, I don't actually know most of the people here. And having people come up. Then the other thing that really stood out was having somebody come up and say like, oh, I've never heard of you guys before. Where are you from? And I was like, well, that's really, we're from here. You know, what a weird, like, what? Like to be at that stage where people didn't even know that that we were from the very town that they were seeing us in. That was like, that was another moment. That was probably around like, yeah, around like 2012, 2011, something like that.
That is so awesome, and I can only imagine again that feeling of like, just looking at the crowd and then not recognizing faces. Because you're right, I never thought about that from the standpoint, but it does make sense that that's gotta be a really unique feeling.
Yeah, it was pretty well, yeah, because then I've been playing music for like over 20 years before that happened. I started playing house shows when I was 15, probably, maybe 16. But uh yeah, and it was always just people I knew. Every show was everyone there was somebody that I knew.
Yep. Oh, that is so cool. Well, again, shifting gears a bit and kind of going back into the record, the Arrows music video is so funny. I want to talk about this with you. Where you guys get the sword and the whole music video is you guys just playing around with this sword, doing all sorts of crazy things with it. That is that's hilarious. That's objectively hilarious. The video is funny, but tell me more about like what went into that idea, and of course, it looks like a blast to film.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the number one thing was trying to do something that was going to be fun for us. Uh and all of the ideas they ultimately start with our friend Whitey, who he writes and directs and usually edits most of the live action videos that we do. Uh, so he came up, he came to us with a list of ideas. Um, probably sometime in 2019 already that we started meeting with him, and uh, I guess that one I think came along a little bit later, but he I think was just watching YouTube videos and saw like some of the slow motion videos of like kids slicing through stuff with a katana and probably immediately thought of us. Uh and then but realized he's smart enough to know that like people are going to draw comparisons to the Wires video. So that's why he put like, you get ahead of it a little bit. Like he put the intro on there that called back to the Wires video.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like being able to do stuff like that and film our actual reactions to how fun it is to slice through stuff with a katana. It's like that's part of the magic formula that he'd already discovered with that Wires video. So yeah, I think it worked out really well. It's fun for me to watch because I wasn't in all of it, so I can enjoy it as much as you can.
Yeah. I think my favorite part is when it's like, let's split the check, and then you just take out the katana and cut the table in half. It's just
Yeah.
it's so perfect.
Yep.
So, getting back into the record again, one of the things that I do love about Red Fang that I want to get your insight on and how you go about this, how you do this, and how much of a say you have in this more post-production aspect of the album, because Red Fang in particular, the music sounds very rough and raw, but also professional. So it's not like just basement grunge. It has a very professional quality, but it doesn't lose that grit. And I feel like that's a fine line to walk for a lot of bands.
Yeah, you know, um it's something that we didn't it was never really part of our mission statement. I think it's something that like a lot of the stuff that got us where we are is part of a series of accidents that were all fortunate accidents, I guess. Um we it starts I think with the songwriting that we made a point of steering away from the kind of songwriting that all of us were guilty of for many years, which was just like ridiculously overcomplicated, basically like math rock and prog rock kind of whatever. And that music just got like kind of boring to play and kind of boring to listen to. So we just intentionally simplified the songwriting, um, which makes it easier to play, you know. but we're still not really very good. So it's like a combination. It's like making the songs easy enough to play, but then we still kind of make plenty of mistakes. But then just touring as much as we have, you automatically, when you've played your song 1,000 times, like literally 1,000 times on tour, you just can't help but get like really, really good at doing it. No matter how bad you are, if you do it that many times, you will get really good at doing it. And so we just kind of are locked into that sort of thing. And it just is what like leads to uh when you record, you still can kind of like play your songs pretty well, but like we don't really, none of us obsess over our tones. Um Maybe David does to some degree, but I certainly don't. Like I just want everything to be as easy as possible. Uh so I have no pedals, for example, and I try not to even like turn my knobs ever. The only thing I do is like turn a couple knobs on the bass, but it's just like try to keep things simple. And don't obsess too much about like basically I think we all kind of hate modern sounds. I just think it sounds too clinical and too it takes away the soul or something of the recording. I just love the way stuff from the 70s sounds. As soon as you got into like digital stuff in the 90s, that there's some amazing recordings from that period, but for us, the type of playing that we do, it's not conducive to that really like clinical type of recording. So yeah, it's a tough balance, but I think that we don't do it necessarily on purpose. It just kind of follows from the way that we write and play music.
And once you get into that, like, that more modern sound of producing that you're talking about, it if you go too much on the other end, it can really strip the emotion out of it and like the life out of it. And I think that like that's again why a lot of people love Red Fang is you get that real genuine emotion in the instrumentation and in the vocals.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the point of art in general, is to connect with some sort of human emotion or to evoke some emotion in a person? It's not just to be like, it's not sports. You're not trying to well, sports evokes emotions also, but it's not like you're not it's not the Guinness Book of Records. How's that? You're not trying to like set a record for the most accurate um, you know, like flawless performance. It is more about trying to do something that makes people feel something. So um yeah. I mean, that's basically all you need to say about what music is for.
Yep, and again, it's so true in the sense that like I know I think it was Minor Threat said something about like when Ian McKay went to Fugazi and they started calling them emo core, and he was like, I hate that term because what music isn't emotional?
Right. Right, exactly. Even
Yeah,
like I think that that's one of the things I love about Kraftwerk is that they're like, and Devo, like they're both kind of like they have this sort of like robotic sound to them, but they're like still super soulful, that they
yeah.
prove that it's not necessarily about the sound, that you can do stuff that kind of sounds like it's all programmed, but it can still be super very human sounding.
Definitely, definitely. So now I got one more question for you for all of our listeners listening in or watching this on YouTube. What is one thing that you want these fans to take away from this new Red Fang album, Arrows?
Well, the first thing is I would like to apologize for saying Kraftwerk instead of Kraftwerk, because I'm an American. I'm not from Germany, so I shouldn't say it like that. I'm also not on NPR. Um, so I guess maybe that's the number one thing I want them to take away from that record. But no, I mean, I would just say like, uh, there's nothing to take away from it. Just enjoy it. If you like it, enjoy it, and if you don't, then don't listen to it.
And again, if you like it, you can tune into WSOU 89.5. We'll be playing it all release week and adding a lot of the songs and new music. So get ready.
Awesome.
Thank you so much again for talking with me today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.